Computers are so expensive these days. Every way you look, it seems like there's a new reason for why computers and computer parts continue to increase in price. Over here we have data centers, AI data centers using up every bit of RAM that we want to buy, which has skyrocketed the consumer price for people like me and you. On the other side, you have things like tariffs that are continuing to increase prices on imported goods. All of that has led to prices on computers going through the roof. It is just so expensive for me to go out, buy a laptop, and do things like browse the web, maybe do some light gaming, check the emails. I simply cannot pay the premium that computers demand of us now. If you have found yourself saying something similar to what I just went over, I am here with good news. Ladies and gentlemen, you too can scour websites and stores and find yourself a cheap, usable laptop. I found this little guy on a site called woot.com. If you don't know what woot.com is, real quick, it's owned by Amazon now, I think. Their whole thing is they deal with like scratch and dent, return items, overstock items, that sort of thing. And so you can find some pretty good deals on things like Chromebooks. And this little guy from woot.com cost me a total of $65. $65 for a whole machine that even has a touchscreen on it. I know what you may be thinking. ChromeOS is very limited, Tiny Tech Guy. I can't game on ChromeOS. I can't do anything but browse the internet. Well, this Chromebook actually has a little secret up its sleeve. Get a good look at that, because this Chromebook is running Linux. Oh, jeez. It's okay, it turned back on. That's right, this $65 Chromebook is no longer shackled by the limitations of ChromeOS. I went through the process of installing a Linux distro on it and have turned it into a surprisingly capable little laptop. This whole project was a ton of fun, and I'm going to get into it and how you too can do that. But that brings us to today's presentation, which is Linux on a $65 Chromebook. And the subtitle we're running today is a Chromebook turned full hog. Now, before we get into the bulk of the presentation, I do want to start and say this is not a hit piece on ChromeOS. ChromeOS has a lot of haters out there, and I know that, but I don't hate it. I think it serves its purpose very well. It has a little niche market that it slots perfectly into. They're very easy to use for people that aren't tech savvy. Normally they are pretty cheap. They're cheaper than a full-blown laptop. And as far as manageability for something like a school system, they work really well for that. Again, I think it serves its purpose and it slots into its niche perfectly. So with all that said, some questions may come to mind. Mainly, why would you want to do this? There's a few factors at play here, starting with the fact that they have real hardware in them. In the back of my mind, I always think of a Chromebook as almost a tablet. So it's easy to forget that they actually have a decent processor and decent RAM in them and essentially act as like a modern day netbook. The biggest problem with them, as I said before, is that ChromeOS is very limited. All you're really going to be doing on ChromeOS is using Chrome and doing some light application stuff. You don't utilize the hardware really at all. And so it's easy to forget that it's there, but Chromebooks have normally pretty decent specs. And you take into account that it can actually have some decent hardware in it, and you start looking at how to unlock that, and that's where Linux comes in, because Linux is going to be able to utilize all of the hardware in the Chromebook to its fullest potential. Basically, think of a Chromebook as Gohan. Linux acts as the Elder Kai trying to unlock his hidden potential. I'm a big Dragon Ball fan, okay? Another tally in the win column for Chromebooks is that they are usually very cheap, especially secondhand. Buying them new is one thing, and again, they're gonna be a lot cheaper than some of the laptop counterparts that you can get in a store like Best Buy or Walmart or Target. But if you look for a used market, say Facebook Marketplace, woot.com like I did, they can often be found for under $100. And last but not least, one of the reasons that you would want to do this is because it's fun. You don't need some really strict, specific reason to do something. It can just be fun. Live a little, okay? And now I would like to introduce you to the Chromebook that was used for this project, Earl. I ran a poll on the community tab with a list of nicknames and Earl won. So this is Earl. Earl, he's just a little guy. This is a Lenovo 300E 2-in-1 Chromebook. Now from what I could tell, it's a Generation 2 Lenovo 300E. The product description on Woot didn't specify, and so I was actually gonna look at the serial number of it, but when I unboxed it from Woot, the serial number was scratched off though, and on the back, that's weird. Why is that scratched off? That was really weird and it felt kind of dirty. Now he is just a little guy, right? He's an 11.5 incher and he features a 1366 by 768 resolution touchscreen. You know, a hardware perspective or a build perspective, it's not that bad. Real quick though, the trackpad doesn't work properly. It tracks well enough, but I can't click anything with it. I looked in the settings on ChromeOS and then I thought, well, maybe, you know, the drivers and stuff on Linux will work. Didn't work on that either, and I think it's actually just a hardware specific thing. Now let's get into the nitty gritty. What's driving this thing? And we look at the CPU. This little guy is rocking an AMD Series A chip. More specifically, the A4-9120C. It's 2 cores, 2 threads, and it runs at a base clock speed of 1.6 gigahertz. On paper, it's not that stellar. In practice, it's also not that stellar. And when it comes to RAM, it has some. What we're working with is 4 gigabytes of DDR3 RAM. And then we get into storage. Once again, it doesn't have much and became quite the limiting factor for this entire project because we are working with a grand total of 32 gigabytes. So if we look at what we've got, we don't have much. But the main thing is that it is shackled by ChromeOS. We are definitely not getting the full utilization of all 4 gigabytes of that RAM. And so I wanted to install Linux and see if I could turn this into a full-fledged laptop. And the first step that we have to take there is, of course, choosing a distro. As you could see from the slide before, we're limited here. I can't just plop on ChromeOS or PopOS or Arch or anything like that and expect it to run. What we're gonna need is something that is really lightweight, doesn't require a lot of resources, and is efficient. We're also going to need a distro with a good track record of compatibility. What I mean by that is we want a distro that's going to jive with the hardware that we have. I also wanted something that would be easy and quick to install. Now I love a bit of troubleshooting, don't get me wrong, but our boy here, he's not very fast. And I'm a dad and I work full time and I wanted something that would just be quick and easy and I wouldn't have to troubleshoot it that much. So you look at this list of the requirements here and then you go back and you look at the hardware. And really what I did was I narrowed it down to 3 distros. The first of the 3 was Linux Mint XFCE. XFCE is a desktop environment and it's known for being incredibly lightweight, not very resource intensive, and the installation is pretty small. Second was Xubuntu, which I'm pretty sure I'm saying wrong. Somebody will correct me in the comments and that's fine. This is a very lightweight version of Ubuntu. Again, just a lot less resource intensive. It uses less storage, that sort of thing. And then one of the more fun ones that I had actually never messed around with before was MX Linux. What I did for the distros is I actually live streamed myself creating virtual machines essentially with the same specs as our little guy over here. But I tested all of them out, and it's not apples to apples comparison in the virtual machine to how it was actually gonna run on the Chromebook, but it gave me a general idea. And so everybody's probably wondering, who was the winner? Linux Mint. Look, I know you're about to comment, I chose the wrong distro. I get it. No matter what I chose, it was gonna be wrong. Just leave it at that, okay? I get it. So what we've done now is we've analyzed the Chromebook, we've looked at the hardware, we scoped out and finally landed on a distro. So now we jump into the installation process. For the installation prep, I would say that it is a little unorthodox. The weird thing and why it was a little unorthodox is because Chromebooks don't really use a BIOS. With a Windows PC, when you boot, you're probably familiar with jamming a key and you get into the BIOS settings. The BIOS is what loads first and then loads the operating system and communicates with the hardware that's on your motherboard and all this other stuff. Chromebooks don't use a BIOS. They use a core boot based firmware. I could get into the nitty-gritty of the differences between the two, but to save time, the big thing to know is that the firmware that ChromeOS boots with locks the boot chain to ChromeOS. And so getting a flash drive, putting an ISO on it, and making that bootable, plugging it in, it's not going to work the same way that it would with a Windows machine. What I had to do was get into developer mode. And if you do this, I would just search the model of the Chromebook that you have and then enable developer mode. That's going to show you how to enable it. Once you do that, that's going to allow us to kind of bypass that firmware. So you boot into ChromeOS, you find the instructions on how to enable developer mode, and then you think, okay, I'm ready to go. I've got the USB drive. I'm bypassing the firmware. I should be good to go, right? Wrong. Chromebooks have write protection on them. Each Chromebook is going to be different, but from what I could tell, there are two main ways that they enable this. There is either a write protection screw that you have to remove, or in my case, you have to go in, unplug the battery, plug the power cable in, and boot it from wall power only. You have to leave the battery unplugged to be able to bypass the write protection. So we're bypassing the firmware, we're bypassing write protection. We should be good to go. Again, you assume that and you were wrong. Because the firmware itself is not going to give us the capability of writing a new operating system to the Chromebook itself. That's where a tool like Mr. Chromebook.tech comes into play. This is an openly developed bash script. This script goes in and it wipes everything from the Chromebook and then puts on a different firmware that kind of emulates and operates similar to how a regular BIOS does. To run this, you have to go into the terminal from developer mode and then input a command that pulls the script down and then runs that script. It's not guaranteed. If you run this, there is a chance that you brick the device. I will leave a link to that tool in the description. Check it out. It's very interesting. It's very cool to look at. But again, proceed with caution as you could brick the device. Now, I will say real quick, it does give you the option to back up your machine before you run it. Please do that. Backups are incredibly important, and you can only fail as hard as your backups will allow you. So finally, we were ready. We've done everything that we need to do to prep the Chromebook to install an ISO, and that's what we need to do. Of course, the first step is whatever distro that you end up going with, you want to download the ISO. Once you have the flash drive and the ISO ready, plug that into your computer and use a program like Rufus, and that's going to allow you to burn that ISO onto the flash drive and turn it into a bootable drive. You'll plug that bad boy into your Chromebook, boot into this new BIOS firmware that we've just installed from Mr. Chromebook, and from the boot options, you will boot into that flash drive, and then that's going to take us into the Linux live environment. Now what this does is it gives us a test area. Really, it just gives you a chance to see how things are going to run, how they're going to operate, stuff like that. From my previous testing on a VM, I already knew that I was okay with it, so what we do from there is we go ahead with the install process. That's going to run, it's going to install everything that you need, and then you officially have a Linux laptop that used to be a Chromebook. So you've booted into Linux, now what? We use it up, baby. Now for this video, for me to show the capability and usability of the Linux Chromebook, I wanted to test three things. One is just general use, things like web browsing, opening apps, installing things, just general computer usage. After that, I wanted to see how it handles multiple tasking. We don't have a lot to work with this guy, so I wanted to see how it would do if I had multiple windows open and just jumped between them. If you're standing, you may want to be seated because the last thing that I wanted to test is gaming. I just wanted to see what it could do. And I did that in three subcategories, I guess. One is locally gaming, so games running on the hardware itself. I wanted to try out emulation and just see how far I could push that. And then the last thing that I wanted to try out and see how well it did is in-home game streaming. And the most important question of it all, FPS? Does it have that? Can it do that? That's what we're going to find out because we are leaving the presentation window and going into the laboratory. And in the laboratory, we are going to see just what Earl is capable of. I would like to officially invite you all to the laboratory. As you can see here, we have everything that we could possibly need for this video. We have the CRT. We have Lord Raiden watching over us. Of course, we have the blue collar baller to the left. And then the man of the hour there in the middle that we're going to be testing, that is Earl. So here we have Earl in his natural habitat. We are on the login screen and you can see it is in fact running Linux Mint. All right, the lights are off and the testing is ready to begin. Real quick, what I want to say is I have used this for a few days now. Now, the last thing I did before I started filming was I needed to make this laptop feel more like a lap home. And what better way to do that than to change the desktop background? Change it into something I'm familiar with, something that I enjoy, and really just make this laptop feel like mine. And I struggled with that. I went back and forth about what I wanted. You know, I wanted something legendary, maybe something iconic, maybe something beautiful. So I settled for all three. So this is the desktop. This is Linux Mint XFCE. Nothing super fancy. I didn't really change anything other than the background. So it's pretty much just stock. This is what it looked like when I booted it up. Right off the bat, the first thing that I want to show is the touchscreen works. Look at this. It works. Didn't install drivers, didn't do anything, it just worked out of the box. How cool is that? So we'll get started with the first thing that I mentioned, which is just using the laptop. But first up, let's just launch a web browser. Of course, we've got Firefox here. You can see, launches right up. Let's go to YouTube. We'll fire up a video, something entertaining here. That's not what I clicked at all. See, it's hitting it pretty hard already. Just hang on, Earl. Ah, this one looks good. The Steam Deck being important. Loaded up YouTube, got a video going, pretty snappy, pretty quick to respond. Say I need to do a little bit of math on the side. We got a calculator over here, pretty quick. Let's do 6 times 7. 42. Say I want to load up LibreOffice. I'm going to take some notes while I'm watching this video. Here, you can see it booted right up there. We've got it running and hit OK there, and then we can just start taking some notes. This guy seems incredibly handsome and is probably better at basketball than you would think he is. Excellent note-taking. What are we sitting at resource-wise? Just 30%. We're barely taxing this bad boy. So as you can see, the first test, it knocks right out of the park. Using it as a laptop, maybe it's not the fastest thing, but things do boot up relatively quickly, and I don't run into any issues launching multiple apps. And that's going to segue us right into the second category, which is multitasking. You know, I'm going to have 2 browser windows up. Say I've got Amazon over here, got the terminal running, got some notes that I'm going to take while doing all of this. Now with all of this running, you can see our resources are getting taxed pretty heavily. We're kind of hitting the ceiling of what this bad boy can do. And Steam isn't even open yet. All right, so that took about 45 seconds from the click of the application to load, but we're headed into Steam. We are officially able to browse the store. Now, yes, it probably took about 2 minutes to get there, but look at all we have open. We've got 2 tabs. We got calculator, notepad, Steam. Steam launched the special offers. Now let's try multitasking. So I'm going to hit Alt-Tab. Got that window open. Let's hit Alt-Tab again. Oh, there's Steam. Okay. So I want to go back to Amazon. Back to the calculator. I got to see what 6 times 9 is. Ah, of course. Go back into the notes. We'll say, hi, Corey. Love you. Friend of the channel, Corey. So, you know, looking at it, really, it's not stellar. Obviously, it bogs down a little bit. But for $65 and the hardware this thing is running, I think this is pretty great. I mean, it's more than usable, especially if you only use 1 app at a time. So you know what? Let's give it a rating here. General use, I would give it a solid 6 out of 10. You know, 1 app at a time, using email, launching apps, installing things. Solid 6 out of 10. It's not going to blow your mind. More than usable. Give it a 6. Multiple tasking. For this, I would say, you know, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. 1 mark down from general use just because it gets bogged down so quickly from not a ton going on, but it is more than usable. And once things kind of settle from that initial launch, it actually becomes much faster. You can see the resources actually in the background. We're only using about 40 to 70% of the CPU now, so it's a lot better. So we've seen how Earl handles the general task, but now let's see how he handles the gamer zone. And now you may have noticed in the top right while I was talking that a controller synced. And yes, I was able to successfully sync a Bluetooth Xbox controller to Earl. So I wanted to break gaming down into three kind of subcategories. That's going to be local gaming. We're going to do some emulation. And then I wanted to see how local game streaming runs on this. So we're going to use Moonlight. We'll start with local gaming, and we're going to use Steam for that and install a game and launch it. For the game, we do have to be kind of picky, and we really have to temper our expectations. We pretty much have no storage to work with at all. So I needed to pick something that is a small install, but is also lightweight, and I know it's going to run. Like, I'm not gonna launch Armored Core 6 on this device. There would be no reason to do that. But something like Ball X Pit, kind of lightweight indie game, maybe we just might get us a surprise and see some local gaming. Oh, we're in. We're in. All right, to give it a fair shot, of course, I have the screen resolution set to the native resolution of the screen. And then quality preset, we are gonna go as low as we can. You can see when we're running at high, I don't know how easy it is to see, I'll zoom in. Running on high, just in the menus, we are barely cracking 20 FPS. We go to low, that jumps up to a solid 30 FPS. So now we're gaming. But that's just the menus. Let's see how it actually performs in game. We're just kind of in the hub world here. A little bit of lag on there. Not the smoothest experience, but the game is running, and it's running at 35 frames a second. Let's do what we were born to do, and that's throw balls, baby. All right, here we are. Ooh, a little stutter there. Little stutter as some of the assets come in. And there's not a lot of assets on the screen right now, but we're still, we're actually kind of getting up close to 40 FPS. But this is playable. I mean, this is more than playable. If I gave this to an 8-year-old, you're telling me they wouldn't play this and have a grand old time? I mean, heck, I'm having a good time. But it is running, and I could play this. I think this is fine. And this is all taking place, mind you, on a $65 Chromebook. Now that we have seen an acceptable local gaming experience from Steam, we'll jump right into emulation, which is going to utilize RetroArch. I didn't set up a lot of the stuff that you normally do with RetroArch. I just kind of left it lean and mean so I can be quick with it. To really showcase what I tested, I wanted to show you the ROMs folder. So I started pretty low with NES running Tetris. That ran at full speed, ran perfectly, no hiccups whatsoever, synced with the controller, did all of that. It was perfect. So then I bumped it up. I upped the ante and went to Super Nintendo. And with Super Nintendo, I specifically did Yoshi's Island because it's notoriously more demanding than most other Super Nintendo games. And a lot of people in the emulation space call it the Yoshi's Island test. I'm here to tell you that Earl passed the Yoshi's Island test with full colors. It ran at 60 FPS, it was smooth, it didn't hitch at all, worked with the controller. I was very impressed. I bumped it up a little bit with PS1 and ran Crash Bandicoot. And again, it ran at full speed with no issues. So then I got daring. I bumped it up a little bit more. Nintendo 64. Surely Earl, with hardly any resources at all, would struggle with Super Mario 64. Boy, was I wrong. It ran it without issues at full speed, like I was playing the game on a Nintendo 64. My mind was blown. So then I really upped the ante. I said, all right, I'm not messing around anymore, Earl. It's time to go to work. And I loaded up Dreamcast. Dreamcast is what I want to show on screen right now, with one of my favorite games of all time, Rayman 2: The Great Escape. Up in the top right-hand corner, you're gonna see the frame rate, and in the menus right now, we're running at about 50. They are glitched out a little bit, running at like supersonic speed, but that's okay. So we're watching this cutscene, and you'll notice in the top right, we're hitting 60 FPS. This Linux Chromebook with an AMD Series A chip is displaying a Dreamcast game at 60 FPS. Earl is earning overtime as we speak. Now I know what you're thinking. It was a cutscene. It was just a little world there, but look at this. We're moving around. We're still getting 60 FPS. Jumping around. Let's go on the slide here. Still 60 FPS running at full speed, baby. I'm sitting here, I'm telling you, you could play the entire Dreamcast library that you legally obtained and emulate it on this $65 device. ChromeOS, you're not gonna run emulators on ChromeOS at all. But here we are running up to Dreamcast at full speed and enjoying one of the greatest games ever made, which is Rayman 2: The Great Escape. If you have never played this game, please go play it. It is incredible. It's a 3D platformer. Excellent game. Again, one of my favorite games of all time, but you can see we're in an actual world here and we are still running at 60 FPS. Earl, you've really outdone yourself here. And last but not least, the final gaming test for Earl is going to be local game streaming. You can install Moonlight very easily on Linux, and in doing so, that gives you access to your gaming PC to run games from that PC, but stream them to the device that you're running Moonlight on. And so here you can see I'm on the Blue Collar Baller as we speak. This is a Windows environment, but I'm running it from Earl, and I have full control of this environment. I have the stats on the screen here. You can see right here the decoding is sitting at about 5 milliseconds, so about 5 milliseconds of latency, and we're about 40 frames a second, but not really anything going on. So let's launch a more demanding game like Armored Core 6. And so all of a sudden, through the power of in-home streaming, Earl, the tiny Linux Chromebook, is running a demanding game like Armored Core 6. So really, just to clarify here, all of the heavy lifting is being done by the Blue Collar Baller. You can see the stats here. We're getting 60 FPS, and the average latency is hovering around 6.5 to 7 milliseconds, which to me is not noticeable at all. I don't think Earl ever thought he'd be running a game like this. Yeah, and then there we go. You can see, launch some of my weapons here, fire some things off, get some particle effects going. And we are staying at 60 FPS. The average latency is about 7 milliseconds. I mean, this is incredible. You could set this up somewhere in the house, stream games to it, and you just have you just got little Earl hanging out there, displaying some games for you. Wow, this is awesome. Now, I will say the screen on Earl leaves a lot to be desired. It's not super bright, it's not super sharp, and it doesn't have a high refresh rate. So we've done it. We played a game locally, we did some emulation, and we streamed a game. Let's break those three down and give them some grades. Local gaming, I'm gonna have to really hit them here and give them a 3 out of 10. There's just not enough horsepower to run things, and you also run out of storage almost immediately. So the list of games that you could even install is quite small, and then most of those probably aren't going to run very well. However, we did launch Ball X Pit, and I'm sure there are some other indie games, something like Hollow Knight would probably run just fine. So I can't give them a 0, I'm gonna give them a 3 out of 10. Emulation, I gotta be honest, I'm giving Earl a 10 out of 10. He blew my expectations out of the water. I didn't think he would be able to run Yoshi's Island, but that ran beautifully. And then you saw I was running Dreamcast games at full speed without any hitches, and that's incredible. For $65, you're getting an entire laptop that can play up to Dreamcast games? I mean, to me, that solidifies a 10 out of 10. Streaming for me on this device is gonna sit just above middle of the road. I think it's really neat that it works and it runs really well. So the average latency is very low. We maintain the 60 FPS. You also have the option to fold it in half and set it up in like tent mode. That would be cool to stream games to. But the screen itself is pretty poopy. It's not a very high resolution at all. It's a very odd aspect ratio. And all in all, it's just not the best screen to experience things on. So 6 out of 10. It does everything you need it to do, and it does it pretty well. It's just the screen that sucks. Was that weird leaving the present? I haven't done that yet in a video. Was that weird? Anyway, as you can see, this thing is shockingly capable. I mean, it's not knocking anything out of the park. It's not the next greatest thing. really, I think it punches well above its weight and shocked me in many different ways. And really, due to the limited storage on there, I was really just scratching the surface of what I could do with it. And I really wanted to run some more intensive games. I didn't have the storage for it. And really, I was just kind of running out of time. But for $65 and a little bit of elbow grease, that is a fully functioning Linux laptop now. It's no longer chained by ChromeOS. It can really spread its wings and fly. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, or don't. I don't really care. And hey, I enabled YouTube memberships. If you're interested in that at all, I set it to $2 a month. It's the whole package. I'm not going to do any tiers or anything like that. It's just going to be $2 a month. You don't have to do it. I'm going to be totally fine, and I love everybody equally. But if you're interested in that, there it is.